So I'm now joined by Caroline. Caroline, you are the founder of, actually, I think you're a business empire, I would say. Tell me about the work that you do, because you do so much.
So here's the thing, right? I've had the privilege of having a corporate career, but prior to where I am now, that gave me 15 years to see what it looks, what the capital industrial construct of the U.S. is. Right, I work for the Target Corporation. Actually started as an intern, then to Chief Culture and Diversity and Inclusion Officer in 15 years, so kind of saw every level of the organization. Prior to that, I'd done nonprofit and community work. When I got the call to come over to Essence Ventures, I thought they had called the wrong person. I was like, I'm not a media girl. Like, what do you want? But over the time that I evaluated it, what became true was the journey that I had had in the last kind of third of my corporate career to really become comfortable being Caroline, right? Just authenticity, whatever that may be, was what then opened the door to what Essence needed at the time, which was, I was not qualified to be in media, I'd never worked in media, I don't know whether that's a cute cover or not, that's not my expertise, but what Rich Lou Dennis wanted when he came to talk to me, and we had never met each other before, was the way that I was living my life is what he wanted people to see as the future of the brand. And had I not made those decisions to shift, I don't know that I would have been the right person. And so the opportunity to come into Essence and play that role then became an act of service for me, right? Wow. This brand, it was in a very delicate place. He had bought it out of Time Inc., where it had been malnourished for about 20 years, and it needed to be revived. Like, it was not in a good business state, but it had such cultural equity that kept it alive, that we just needed to do the balance. And what I do know how to do is transform organizations. What I do know how to do is just operate in this optimism that other people can't see, drive change and transformation. And so coming into the role and having what I do and how I live be why I was there gives you a different confidence, right? And then to have the experts underneath. So first it became about stabilizing the operation that is Essence. Magazine, festival. The festival that Essence runs is the largest festival in the country by per day attendance. Not largest black festival, largest black. 500,000 people attend that every year. And it's been happening for 29 years. So that was first our thing. And then what the vision was to create this frictionless and boundaryless black wealth economy. And what I mean by that is, for a lot of the time, especially in the US, black media outlets like Essence were focused on helping black community be seen, whether it be African, Caribbean, African American. It was about visibility because we weren't seeing ourselves on platforms and in magazines and all of that. So its founding was about exposure and illuminating. Because Essence did its job, this phase is about, now that we've been seen, recognized, and we're contributing to culture, what is the economic algorithm that needs to be adjusted so we get the value for what we contribute? Mm-hmm. So what we would say about this time was about, we're really focused on economic inclusion as a human right, which means as we looked to acquire other companies that would round out this desire to be a frictionless, boundaryless black wealth ecosystem for the new general market, we looked at things like Afropunk. So we added Afropunk to the portfolio because it focused on the black that had been put in the margins by black. You're a comic book person, you're a this, you're a that. You go over here. You're not this, right? We did the same with BeautyCon, where I believe that what's happening with beauty globally, the African continent is dealing with this as well. Things like colorism and things are becoming these things that brands are coveting, but they're creating mental health crises for women and for those that see beauty, because these overtouched, unattainable, narrow positions of what black beautiful looks like, whether it's light skin or particular body shape or whatever, are literally things global black and African women are trying to achieve.
And I have to just come in there, because what you're talking about is so incredible, and everything you've described so far is like you have been building bridges, from the African American community within America, in Africa, like everybody can see themselves reflected in this magazine. So when people talk about changing the narrative, you've been doing that for years. And now I love that you have said, you're bringing these people in from the margins. You're tackling more taboo subjects, right, within these communities, black communities, brown communities, any communities, because we all feel the same. Is there anything, when you take a pause and you look back on what you've done so far, that you are most proud of?
So if you were to ask me that question through the lens of my professional journey, I would tell you It is the moment at 36 years old where I chose to operate in my full authenticity. That was everything from what I did with my hair, to what I did with my clothing, to what I asked for as a job. That moment was a reconciliation of when I was 17 and got pregnant, right? And I'd been stuck there. And so the minute that I did the inner work to make the decision to pivot into who I was told I was, that moment has really changed my life, but more importantly, it's changed the way people see my life. And that contribution is something that I'm so grateful I made the transition around, because there's another Caroline watching it. And if I didn't show up the way that I do, she doesn't know who she is. And so it opened this service role that I play with how I live my life. I think if you were to ask me how that connects then just to my professional journey, my jobs, I've never been qualified for any job I've been hired for. Let me be really clear. But technically, never been qualified for any job I've been hired for. What I have had is a tenacity, a grit, a leadership acumen, an agility for learning, a comfort with failure. And because those are harder skills to teach, every role I've had has been people who saw the core competencies I had and were willing to teach me the technical.
And give you the opportunity.
Give the opportunity, but also protect me in the opportunity, because we've watched people be given opportunities.
Yeah.
They go in, it doesn't go well. Well, we tried, right? I am a girl who has had the unique opportunity to be given opportunities I wasn't qualified for on paper, but been given the air cover to learn.
I think what you did, saying that you made a decision to be your authentic self, because people don't talk about it enough, but it takes courage to do that.
It does.
But what is incredible is in the position that you're in, to so many other girls out there who watch what you do, not necessarily what you say or write. They're now looking at you as a role model, and you're giving them courage to be their authentic selves. And it's hard. We all struggle with imposter syndrome.
Yep.
But really, what is the one takeaway, the one message that you want to give to them today?
So to your point, I used to sit and listen to these dynamic, inspirational women tell these stories of their achievements. And their stories were great, but they always told the story as if nothing bad happened. And so I would sit there and go, I wish I could be her, but I failed 7 times this morning already. So clearly that's not who I'm going to be, right? I would remove myself from believing that what she represented was possible for me. But I promised myself that if I ever got to that place, I would tell the story as it happened, not the way I want it to be remembered. And so for me, the biggest piece of advice I would give based on what I lived, not what I read, is the earlier you can do 3 things, the better. The earlier you can pursue the purpose you were born to do on the world indignantly. I believe everybody has a purpose. You need to find it, because if you don't find it, nobody else can do it and the world goes without. It's your obligation to the world. It's not your success, it's your obligation to the world. Find that thing. Number 2, operate in who you are. Who you are is who you are. If you cannot be who you are, where you are, you change where you are, not who you are. And we're so indoctrinated to feel like the who is what has to change, when the where, and it could be a mental where, it could be a physical where, it could be a workplace where, it could be a life where, right? The where is what should be negotiable, not the who. Do not ever compromise that, because it's so hard to get back, right? It's so hard to get back. And then the third one that I would offer people is change your relationship with failure. Change your relationship with failure. We have been trained to avoid failure. And when it happens, cover it up as quickly as possible and hopeful nobody saw. My shift was giving myself a daily threshold for failure. I gave myself 5. The type A's pass out every time I say that. Pick 3. It'll be fine. But I changed my threshold with failure, and I said I get 5 fails every day. I get to decide what those fails are, and I don't get to make it a bad day until I hit 6. And what that did for me was, 1, it gave me the opportunity to finish my day full of opportunities instead of being stuck at the 9 a.m. failure and missing everything else that could have happened that day, right? So I get to live my whole day. But the second thing that it did accidentally is, because I had this practice of 5 fails a day, even if I got mad about a failure, I moved through it faster because I knew I still had some in the bank. And what I became was one of the best at bouncing back. I became an expert in failure recovery, because I would not ruminate and just you go. The bank was the reason why, but the skill that got built was this idea of I win in inches because I can bounce back faster than my opponent. And so those would be the 3 things I would say. Live in indignant pursuit of your purpose. Don't stop till you find it, because the world needs it from you if you don't do it. Number 2, never change the who. change the where, and don't stop till you find the where your who is best. Number 3, build a threshold for failure in your life so that you don't miss the opportunities that come right after failure, and then that way you will become a failure recoverist, and that's the competitive advantage that helps you win.
That is priceless advice, and I really take it to heart. I'm so grateful. Finally, as we just wrap this up, you know, I have to say, you've done so much, you've accomplished so much, and it's really fascinating speaking to you. But as we look ahead, you know, to the next 12 months, until the next Gabby, what do you want to see change? What do you personally, Caroline, want to accomplish by this time next year?
I think for me, what I want to accomplish by this time next year is being able to have the value that individuals contribute that are of the African diaspora be quantified so that it can be pursued and rectified. There's a number that needs to sit with how Black creatives contribute. So I have a whole lane of my work that's about fashion. What is the Black African contribution to fashion to the world, and has that been the economic value they've returned back? I want to quantify that.
Right.
I want to quantify what do we contribute in places and spaces of business and capital and entrepreneurship, both on the continent and here.
With the aim of quantifying it so you can make sure that
so I can reconcile the books.
Right.
Because we know, here's what people do. They spend a lot of money talking about how people of African diaspora spend money. They talk a lot about our spending power, a lot about how much money we have. What they don't talk about is how much money we're owed.
And so you want hard data.
I want the data on how much we are owed so we can pursue getting our money back.
Well, I look forward to seeing you next year and
Thank
you telling
you.
me about how you've
I'll
done
be able
that.
to quantify it. I may not have gotten it all back yet, but it will be quantified by next year, because that's what we talk about a frictionless, boundaryless Black wealth economy, that foundational data is actually what's important. Because we're also talking about a 100-year plan. I got something I got to do in my generation. It doesn't mean that I'll be done with it in my generation. The Native American culture has the 7 generations theory, which is everything you do, you should be thinking about the next 7 generations. This is a 100-year plan, but I gotta do something with my time here. And getting that foundation to be clear about what is the amount we're owed is a very critical point for moving it forward.
Well, I have no doubt that once you put your mind to something, it is going to happen. But I have to say that what's also really nice is that you said you've done so many different things and you didn't necessarily know where they would lead you, but that everything has contributed in a way to your eventual success. And that in itself is a message to anyone watching that even though it doesn't feel like it's making sense, every skill you have, every failure, every success is valuable.
Yeah, and here's what fuels you on the way, because I think people get afraid that you're living in like this bewildered forest state where you're just like, I don't know what I'm doing. That's not what it feels like. What fuels the courage to stay in the unknown, to know there's something coming but not know what it is the fact that I've committed to live in indignant pursuit of my purpose. So what happens is, whatever your spirituality belief is, the things that are on track to your purpose get affirmed. The things that are not start to die off or feel weird. And so what you get is these little nudges throughout that journey that go, I'm not sure where I'm going, I just know it's not that way, right? So you stay this way. And then you get here and it's like, ooh, there's a fork. Which one do I take? Ooh, that, right? So you actually get these nudges that at least affirm the direction you're going, even if the destination isn't defined. And I tell people all the time, the best relationship you should have is with your intuition.
Yeah.
That will respond to everything that you need, and then eventually you'll end up landing in a place and you'll be like, I would have never guessed this, essence. I'd have never guessed this was it, but this was it, because everything feels right, but you also see your contribution become seamless because it's attached to what you were born to do in the world. So while it looks like a loopy thing, the magnet is the indignant pursuit of your purpose and the affirmations of the universe as we go.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Caroline.
You're welcome.
It's really
Thank you
been
for
a
having
privilege.
me.